Hello, everybody or anybody. I'm so glad to see you guys here today. I didn't know whether anybody would show up. It's before Christmas and all of that. Who is being stingy with the likes? It could be me. Um, this is let's see. No, it could be me because I've been busy producing more, perhaps too much. And then there has been there's a flood of people who have been watching these short videos that I make, and I'm not keeping up. In fact, maybe I should at some point have one of you, like Paula or Jeff, handle the comments section. I've been thinking lately that I'm a little too harsh with my commenters when I get snark from the Trumpists. I think that it may be time for me to reevaluate whether, in fact, I am getting my yayas out by being tough with them. I do believe there's a place for being tough with them. But at the same time, it's not always the place, and I think I might do better by asking more questions of them, or engaging them in a different way. One of the approaches I've tried recently, but perhaps not enough, is I am sure you're a decent guy in real life. You're just playing this role as a hobby, something like that. Anyway, Michael and Jeff and Paula, nice to see you here. There are other people here too, apparently. There were 8 for a minute, and now there's 4. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Nice to have you here. Remember what we're doing. I'll try to remember what we're doing, which is we're playing with your ideas to the extent you've got some. So I want to prompt you right away by asking, have you had any interesting thoughts this week? Have you thought something new that you'd like to share and fool around with here? I will never disabuse you of your ideas. If you come with an idea, I will not do the famous Dan Aykroyd thing where I say, "Jane, you ignorant slut." It's not like that, but I might kick the tires on it, and then for you to reflect on it and think whatever you want about it. Ultimately, because I don't speak from a position of authority, but from a position of curiosity, and I bring a certain kind of approach to evaluating ideas. So anything is fair game except for MMT. Michael, someday we'll talk about it, but not in this setting, I don't think. But anyway, anybody have any ideas this week? Any ideas that you've come to that you're playing with? For me, the ideas go up and down. I made 25 short videos on Monday. There's a little bit of a lag on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Some of it is because I've been having digestive troubles, and some of it is because I was doing other things. But in general, my ideas are regenerative. I keep on coming back around the same ones. There's a kind of a rerun aspect to my work, which is it doesn't feel it feels like the right way to do it. You come back and revisit the same ideas. Michael just got over a cold. There you go. Yeah, and I'm still struggling with something. I don't know what it is. It's digestive. And the thing about digestive is it is certainly convincing. Whatever's going on in your belly. I've long said that I would take 12 headaches over one stomach ache. And these days I've been dealing with some kind of stomach ache. Anyway, enough about my health, okay? What we want to do is evaluate the health of ideas. I do have one I'll start with while you come up with bum indeed, Paula. Yes, my bum has been involved. So I'm gonna broach an idea that is really fundamental. Yes, penetration. The repetition for penetrating thick heads. That's part of what the reruns are about. It's also about something that has been sometimes misattributed to Frederick Gauss, the guy who came up with the bell curve. He said, think deeply about simple things. And that's what I'm going to bring you first off. Paul, at one point you said, I don't know if I really am interested in this kind of question, but I'm going to raise it anyway, and I think you might be interested in it. This is how I framed it this morning. I have framed this many times, but here I'm going to do it again because it came up in conversations with people this week. I think there's a difference between things that try and things that don't try. Question for you is, do you think there's a difference between things that try and things that don't? For example, do you think that you try, but a rock doesn't try? It's not trying to do anything, but you're trying to do something. Do you think that that animals try, but computers don't try? Or do you think that computers do try? One way to distinguish between things that try and things that don't is a computer trying to do something? Let's say an AI, is it trying to do something? Um, uh, or is it a tool that we use when we're trying to do something? Okay, so I want to introduce you to 6 approaches to this question. It's been in the air for 2,000, 3,000 years. And there are 6 basic approaches to it. And some of them are going to sound batshit crazy to you. And yet at the same time, I think that if you give it some thought, you'll notice that actually you're probably a little confused about it too. Most people are. Okay, so one version of it is, they come in pairs, these different approaches. So I said there's six different approaches, and I'm going to say that there are 3 different pairs. Okay, so one pair starts with the assumption, well, the laws of the universe are uniform and they're everywhere. And so that means that either nothing's trying or everything's trying. So I'm going to give you the names for, oh, look at that. I can do that anytime. Let's see if I can do that. See, it's trying to help me out with the video. See, that's where we start to wonder about it. I don't know what hand gesture I made, but it was cool. Okay, so if the laws, let's say, of physics are uniform, physics and chemistry are uniform, then that must mean that nothing's trying. I mean, think about it. You're made of nothing but matter in motion, and so since matter isn't trying to do anything, then you're not either. So this is called material eliminativism. And believe it or not, it's a credible school of thought within the sciences and in philosophy. I think it's not even wrong, but that's me, because I'm going to tell you which one I am, obviously, too. Okay, so material eliminativism says, no, really, nothing's trying. You may try to believe that you're trying, but you're not really trying. An example of this would be the determinist school of thought, which is that if matter is all operating by these determinate physical laws, and you're made of matter, nothing but matter, then obviously you're doing the same thing. And not only that, everything you do, everything I do, you could unpack it as a bunch of molecules in motion. So where is it trying? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So consciousness, we're going to set that word aside. We can come back to it. Because it's a complicated thought about that, but this is definitely related to what we call cognitive science or consciousness studies. So we're getting there, but I'm gonna say, okay, so we got the school of thought that says nothing's trying. Then there's another school of thought that says everything's trying. That since if everything's following the same rules of physics, the same laws of physics, then apparently everything is trying a little bit. If you get enough molecules are trying to do something, and if you get enough of them together, then it becomes conscious. So for example, there's a professor at Harvard, a biologist, an esteemed biologist named David Haig, and I had exactly this argument with him a while ago. No, he's definitely one of these panpsychists. He says everything's trying a little bit. Okay. So those are 2 schools of thought, which is if the laws of the universe are uniform and nothing is added to them and all we got is matter in motion, then nothing is trying or everything is trying. Okay, now we move to 2 other realms, to another pair. This one is the one that I'm going to call it emergentist, and there's 2 versions of it, and I'm one of them, and there's another one. So one version of it I'll call dualist emergentist, which is, yes, some things are trying because something from a second realm was added that makes it come alive. Now, this is probably the standard oldest one, of course, of all of them, which is their spirit. Spirit enters the body. What is spirit? Well, it's not a material thing, it's from another realm. So that's why we call it dualism. Another version of this is that consciousness enters in. So, yeah, there are the laws of nature, but then there's this other added thing from another realm that makes some things alive and not others. So, spirit, God's will, higher power, vital force, any of those are versions of this. But there's also some scientific versions of this dualist approach, which says, yes, there's a difference between the things that are alive and the things that are not. The things that are alive contain this extra stuff. Okay. So you can think of it like, well, yeah, it's just matter, but there's software running on matter. So that's actually a version of dualist emergentism, which is you say that there's some software running on the hardware. What is the software? Well, it's not exactly material. It happens in matter, but it's not actually material. Another approach to this would say that, well, information is this secondary realm that gets added to matter. So I'm just matter, except I'm not, because I have these special molecules in me, which are information-bearing molecules, or DNA, and they're what make me come alive. So that's dualist emergentism. Now, I am the other kind of emergentism, which is to say, I only think there's the physical realm. I don't think there's only matter, but I do think there's just the physical or natural realm. And I work in science where the goal is to find natural explanations for all natural phenomena. Trying as natural phenomena, I have to be able to explain it within nothing but physical nature. I don't get to claim that there's this added stuff. I don't get to claim spirit. I don't get to claim software. I don't get to claim information. If I want to talk about information, what is information? Information is something that is used by beings that are trying. So I'm a being that tries. And so, yeah, I use information. But what that's really about is my ability to interpret something as useful for my trying. Okay. So I am that kind of emergentist. So remember, you got the folks who say nothing's trying. You got the folks who say everything's trying. You got the folks who say some things are trying because something was added to them. And then you got the folks like me who say, no, the burden is on me to explain how some things are trying and nothing is added. Nothing is added. I have to explain it within nothing but physical chemistry. And not only that, I have an explanation. And not only that, it doesn't smuggle in a dualism. And if you ever want to hear about that, I've got lots of videos. I got a book out on it. I can explain it here, whatever you want. It's got to be incredibly simple. You start with you have to explain how the very first entity that tries ever came about. Whether it's alive or not is not actually the issue. And so this is what I've been working on for 30 years with this guy, Terrence Deacon. Okay, now I got to list the last two. Remember, I said there were 3 pairs. So the first pair was everything's trying, nothing's trying. Second pair was, well, some things are trying and because there's something added. And there's then the folks like me who say some things are trying and nothing is added. And then there are 2 other schools, which I'll call who knows and who cares. So yeah, there we go. Michael's got it. So notice what I've got in the title of my book, Neither Ghost Nor Machine. So from the start, I'm saying, look, I'm not going to go the route where I say nothing's trying, everything's just mechanics. And I'm not going to go the route that says that something was added like a ghost. Okay. You see that? Okay. Now, who knows and who cares? These 2 other schools of thought. Who knows is called Mysterianism. It's simply beyond humans to know. There's actually a version of this that's called, what's it called? It's called strong emergentism. Strong emergentism says, well, trying emerges, but it happens in a way that is inexplicable. Weak emergence is closer to what I'm doing. That is, I have to explain how it emerges. But strong emergence says, in a way, yeah, things pop into existence and we'll never know how. I was reading a prestigious cognitive scientist yesterday who made this argument. So, yeah, I mean, when I run these by people who aren't in the field, they often say, wow, there's actually a professor who is making that argument. Jesus, that's bonehead. That ain't even wrong. But when you start to play with this stuff, it is a little confusing. Now we got a both ands here. Both. You are speaking right into the who cares version of it. I just came up with "Who cares" as a title for this, but I think it's actually related. Um, so who knows is Mysterianism. It says it's beyond us to know, give up on it. Now I'll end up at an academic conference or something like that, where we're sitting at the table trying to figure out how trying starts, how trying emerges within nothing. And someone was sitting at the table and say, it's beyond us to know, beyond us to know, beyond us to know. And I'll say, dude, that's totally fine. You're excused from the table. You don't have to be here. Here we're trying to figure out what the actual fuck we are, we trying beings. Now, so so the who cares version of it is I don't mean that they're cynical, they're more like poetic. And it's actually both and. It's like, well, I mean, I can talk about us like a machine. I can talk about us like we're trying beings. I can do both. It's mix and match. It's kind of poetry. And actually, this school is called poetic naturalism. And I have many research colleagues who are in this realm. They're basically saying, look, it's all, I mean, this is how I think they think about it, which is it's hard enough to to be trying like we are. I mean, I don't have to figure out what trying is. I'm busy living my life. I'm trying to enjoy my life. And so you end up with these people who say, let's just we don't need to figure this out. We can mix and match it. And you'll get the same from, in a way, that's the deepest, you could say the oldest version of this. Think of it this way. There are plenty of religious people in the world who go to church or believe in some faith or another, some spiritual approach, and they are using the dualist ideas. That is, they say that they're spirit. They feel spirit, and so they can talk about it. But if they want to get their cancer treated, they go to a doctor who treats it like it's a machine. Or if they want to fly someplace, they fly on planes that are not built by people who are assuming that there's this added thing called spirit. So there are people who are trying to understand and people who are not trying to understand. Um, and it's especially funny to hear from people who are basically saying trying isn't real, and they're trying to convince you that trying isn't real. You can believe that you are a self that is trying. I like that, Jeff. Yeah, that's right. Spirit Airlines actually, they built their planes with Spirit, and this is one of the problems with Spirit is that talk is cheap, and therefore talk of Spirit is cheap. This is a major theme for me in the last few weeks, which is once you go dualist, you can do all sorts of stuff with this extra realm. It's this weird currency that's kind of everywhere and nowhere. I've talked about this before. Love is an example of this. So that's why they don't have to charge very much because spirit is cheap, right? And that's why it's a little rickety because spirit is cheap. It's lip service. But anyway, there we go. Okay, so you got those schools. Now, I want to point to one other thing, which we call the epistemic cut. But all I need to tell you about it is, here's an interesting question to pose to you. Set aside which of those schools you fall into. Where do you draw the line? For example, I had a conversation with a PhD who was saying, I can't believe you think that trees are trying. No one thinks that trees are trying. Plants are trying. Are you kidding? They're not conscious. They don't have feelings. I'm quite convinced that anything alive is trying. And not only that, there are, you agree with what all I know is the harder I try in this world, the harder this world is for me. I want to get to exactly that. And that probably relates to what I actually made the theme of this session about. Actually, I will leave on the table this question of where do you draw the line? Is a dog trying? Is a plant trying? Is a single-celled organism? Feel free to weigh in on this. In the meantime, I'm going to pick up what Mimi the painter one says. Now, one version of it is that the harder you try, the harder the world is for you. I have heard that as a philosophical argument, almost like God gives you harder problems the harder you try. I don't bet that's what you're saying, and I don't assume it. There's trying smarter, there's trying harder, there's that difference. Obviously, when we talk about trying smarter, what we're talking about is trying in a way that makes it so um, we don't have to try as hard. We say there's no free lunch, and that's technically true. At the same time, there are cheaper lunches, and we seek them out. I am often trying to find ways, tools that I can use to make it so I don't have to try as hard. For example, this morning I spent some time once again poring over what's new in AI animation because I want to be able to just write a script and run it through something, um, and then have it be an animation. Well, I'm trying to so that will take a up a steep learning curve with AI so that I can get to the point where it's down where it's easy for me to do it. For example, I put out a Donald Trump, AI Donald Trump tells it like it is every day. And this morning I woke up to someone saying, "How long did that take you?" That was time wasted. Fuck off. And I wrote back to say, well, as I say, I'm a little hostile these days. I said, "How long did it take you to write that?" It took me about as long. What all I have to do for a Donald Trump video, I made another one this morning, or two this morning actually, is I write up 1,000-word script. That's easy. And then I press a button and it's out there. Now, not laziness, but the natural ability to allow. Okay, I'm not sure where to follow there, but I do want to say this. One of the videos I put out this morning is about something that fascinates me. It's super simple, but it's this. I need confidence in order to try to get good at something. And why do I want to try to get good at something? So that I can have confidence. So there's a chicken and egg relationship between competence, that is being good at something, and confidence. And I think it's a major problem for us when we're young and for young people, and especially for young people today. It's a huge problem. And I think it explains what's going on with Donald Trump. I mean, I think it's the most fundamental explanation I've ever come up with. That was one of the Donald Trump videos I made this morning. It's basically this. You got this chicken and egg problem, and we're living in a world where, as Mimi the painter #1 says, the more she tries, the harder the world gets. I don't think it's because you're trying harder. There's a piece of that. Actually, let me build off of what you said to a new thought for me, which is you've heard this before. Easy does it. Just relax, and you'll be able to get good at something. I think it's half true. As a musician, I know, no, you actually have to really sweat bullets. You have to try really hard before you can let go of trying and just be natural. It doesn't come naturally by simply pretending that it's easy. But we also do know that anxiety and stress can make it difficult to get good at something. So that's very much related to what I'm talking about. I need a certain amount of calm confidence to try to get good at something. And then once I'm good at it, then I will have more confidence. The confidence will feed on itself. That is, I think, the gravy train we're trying to get on. To go from strength to strength is one way that it's talked about, which is I try to get good at something, I get a little good at it, and that makes me more confident. So I try harder, and that makes me more confident. And you could say the encouragement to keep on trying. What Donald Trump has done is what any dictator would do in such a situation, which is he'll say, "Why the fuck are you working on competence? You don't need competence. Look at me. I don't have competence. I'm not good at anything." Just claim absolute confidence. Decouple your confidence from your ability to do anything, from your incompetence. Be totally incompetent, it doesn't matter. You can let the whole thing fall apart as long as you continue to hold on to confidence. I think this has been a big religious message as well. And I think it would be especially freeing, liberating, attractive, addictive for anybody who's trying and not succeeding as they had hoped to. So this is a major problem we're going to have more and more of. When you think about what AI is going to do to making it hard to succeed, no matter how hard you try, we're going to have a whole lot of people who are not feeling competent and are going to wish they were confident. They need confidence more than they need anything, more than food on their table. They are feeling the pain of not having confidence. Think of how many of them will feel confident for doing things in AI. Think of how many people will simply say, fuck competence. I don't need confidence. And that's where they'll end up going. They'll go the Donald Trump road. And it's not about being MAGA or right wing or anything like that. It's just that sense of confidence. I did put out something this week where I was asking, what are you breaking through when you have a breakthrough? I think it's mostly this. It's an article of faith, a leap of faith to confidence no matter what. That you get over this whole thing of it doesn't matter. You stop worrying about your performance and you just simply say, I win. Okay. All right. That was a lot. Let's see. Rage Against the Flow. Okay. So I love whenever anybody quotes anything, it means that I'm competent enough to have gotten something across to Jeff Cheney, which makes me feel more confident. And I swear I live on the same fuel. I am living on that fuel. I woke up this morning between the nausea and a sense that my videos aren't getting as much views. I also had a premonition that no one would show up today. Suppose you give a YouTube live and no one shows up. And I noticed, we're talking about mojo, or we're talking about mogo would actually be a better term for it. It's the motivation to keep going. And you know what it's like when your fuel tank gets low on that. I'm sure you know what that's like. I think we all do. So I'm paying more and more attention to this thing about confidence and how important it is. And notice it's not an intricate or complicated thought at all. It's incredibly simple. Thinking deeply about simple things. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Sometimes rage against the flow. Sometimes rage is the flow. Yes, actually, I'm going to come up to that. I want to go there. We were talking about flow. So one of the thoughts I had, I can't remember if it was this week or last week, might have been this week. So God is the ultimate original trier. He was the original trier. He's trying to make a world, and he made this world, and he tries perfectly. But if you think about God without him trying at all, because I don't think anything in nature at its origins is trying. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in a higher power. I'm deeply spirited, but I'm not spiritual. I don't believe that there's a second realm. I have to explain everything in terms of the realm I've got, and I find it extremely dangerous when we start pulling out our asses second realms like spirit. Have you noticed how many different versions of spirit there are? Do you notice how much bloody damage they do here on Earth by arguing over which magical extra realm exists? I mean, good Lord. So no, I don't get to go there. But I do get to think about an origin, and to me, it is the flow that Jeff is pointing to. It's the first law of everything. There's everywhere in the universe, for simply statistical reasons, messed up is more likely than ordered. Order is rare and tends to not last because everything is falling towards disorder. Everything is running towards messiness. That's a sobering place to start. I think it's the right place to start, and I can also explain how you'd ever get order out of it. How order would ever emerge in a universe where things are falling towards disorder. That's where I have to start. But if I had to name God, I would say, okay, God is not a persona. It's not trying to do anything. It's not a spirit. It's not a second realm thing. All it is the ground from which everything has to emerge, which is everything is falling towards disorder. And I don't say that cynically. I don't say that like I'm some kind of punk. Let's see, just let me do something. Here we go, cancel. I don't get to say that like I'm some kind of punk or death metal guy, who's, it's all about death. No, I'm saying if you really want to get scientific about it, you've got to explain us how we emerged, how we trying beings try to avoid falling apart, which I'm doing all day long, and you are too. So there is that. Now, laziness. I want to get to something. So yes, Paula, Jeff, as Jeff is saying, we are raging. I am raging against the flow. I am raging against my tendency to fall apart. I'll give you a hint at how I'm doing that. The tendency for things to fall apart, for order to get mixed up, is what we call energy. Energy is not a stuff. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. The thing, what Funmaster just said. I'll get back to that. Energy, but please listen for a second. So this is because it's useful, I think. Okay, so we think of energy as this kind of fluid, and this was where science started with it. They called it caloric, and it was an idea right up into the middle of the 1800s. Was that there's this energy that flows, but they noticed it would flow through barriers, and they were having trouble figuring it out. And then they actually figured out. So caloric was like heat, okay, and then they figured out actually no, that's not actually what energy is. So I'll give you an example. So I buy a frozen pizza and I put it in my ice box, my freezer, and it's just in there. And it's got a lot of order in it in this respect, in that the molecules are moving on, they're random, they're moving randomly, but they're moving at a relatively slow speed compared to this hot box I have called an oven. So I take the pizza, frozen pizza, out of the box and off that cardboard, and you take off the shrink wrap because you don't want to eat that. And you stick it in the hot box. And over time, the box gets cooler and the pizza gets warmer. That is flow. That is the second law. What it's doing is it's randomizing the molecular speed across the box and the pizza. And our intuition is that we have taken the box, the oven was full of this hot stuff that got kind of pumped into the pizza. That is not what happened. In fact, it's exactly the same thing that happens when you take a hot cup of coffee and leave it out for a little bit and then it cools down. The room gets a little warmer, the coffee gets colder. That's the second law. That is energy. Energy is not a stuff, it's a gradient. So what I'm doing is I'm actually eating flow. When I take in food and mix it up and turn it into shit, I am using the flow, the actual flow, the gradient to build myself back up. I am using the second law of thermodynamics against itself. That's kind of fundamental to our approach to explaining what we are. But enough about that. I don't want to get too lost in that stuff, or else I'll lose Paula. Or worse, I'll lose Paula because she'll start telling me how the world works in ways that I disagree with, and then I have to deal with that. Uh, not laziness, but the new natural ability for the universe to allow. Okay, I want to pick up on that. All I know is the harder I try in this world, the harder the world gets. Okay, I'm having trouble connecting the two ideas, Mimi the painter. Not laziness, but the natural ability for. Okay, so there are schools of thought that say go with the flow. Okay. I was playing with one of those this week. Again, a rerun. Strive for the inevitable. You even hear it in Tao Te Ching. Strive for the inevitable. Do you hear the paradox there? Strive for the inevitable because if you don't try, it's not going to happen. Do you hear? I find those things charming. Paradoxes to live by. Strive for the inevitable. Another one was what I was talking about earlier, which was though you can try to believe you try, you don't really try. Another version of those kind of paradoxes is choose determinism. Do you hear it there? I hope you get really good at hearing this stuff. Um, uh, yeah, I had a wonderful conversation at a Hanukkah party this week with this wonderful gay Vietnamese guy who decided that since I was into big picture stuff, he could teach me a thing or two from a spiritual school of thought. And he asked me, he interrupted me as I was babbling on about this kind of crap. He said, "When was the last time you were anxious?" And I said, I don't know. It's been a while because actually I'm doing pretty well these days. He said, no, tell me when you were anxious last. He had a formula. He wanted to try on me. Very excited. I said, well, I was flat yesterday. I was feeling flat. He said, I was just asking. I asked him why he wanted to know, and he said, "No, I'm just curious." I said, "I'm sorry, I don't believe you. I think you're about to pitch me something." And sure enough, he was. Um, and he said, "That's oh, I like this. He's clever." We were playful. It was playful, and he said, "You are you are anxious because you have self concepts, like you think you're a man, and like you think you're this, or you have your identity." He said, "That's why you're anxious, and because you have preferences." He said, "What do you think about that?" I said, "You don't really want to ask me that because we're doing two different things. That's a therapeutic school of thought. That's a poetic thing that you can believe to calm your ass down when you're feeling anxious. I'm not doing that. I'm doing something different." And he said, "No, I want to know what you think about this." I'm not trying to not be anxious. I want to be anxious about the right things, not the wrong things. And 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 I did say to him, well, before that, I said, "Oh, so you prefer to not have preferences?" And he said, "Yeah, that's right." I said, "Did you hear that?" So what I'm saying is, I'm inviting you to look for those inconsistencies. If you, the guy was saying, don't have preferences, or I'm someone who doesn't have identities. I've given up on all my set identities. I'm one of those guys. You see the problems there. Anyway, let's see. True, but haven't you been in the flow of music? Don't you play better then? Okay, so actually, this is the thing that this comes back to what Mimi was talking about a minute ago. I think. Um, Most trying, as I've said before, from my perspective, is habitual. For example, the most fundamental trying I'm doing, for example, to try to stay alive, I'm not thinking about it. I'm not feeling it. I'm going with a flow that I have imposed on the second law of thermodynamics. That is, I have all of these habits of my body that are unconscious, unfelt, and yet I think they're trying um, to stay alive. So the same happens in music. Yes, we go with the flow, but only after we have cultivated the habits. Um, there was someone this week who there was a little politics around this. One of my last band incidents, a kerfuffle because I'm sometimes trouble, was a guy who left a jam session because he said I shouted at him. I don't think I shouted at him, but he does, and he might be right. Um, he said it was a jam session. Why are you critical? He had played a sax solo over me singing, and at the end of it, I said, um, "Please don't do that again." And I did, and I said it seethingly. I was angry because when you start singing, you want to go with the flow, and then there's the noise of someone else playing over it in a way that's unconscious from my perspective. And then on top of that, because my hearing is so bad, it really makes it hard to sing when background noise is a major problem for me. Anyway, why am I bringing this up? Because he said it was a jam session. We're just having fun. Why would you pick on my playing if we're just having fun? And my response to that would be, well, yeah, if I came to a jam session and I had a cowbell, cowbells are famous for making people think that they're simple to play, and they are. You can just whack at it, but they are noisy as hell, and they will throw a whole band off because they penetrate. This is not the Saturday Night Live joke. This is a different one. But you can even hear it in Will Ferrell's playing because he's playing and he's not in time, and it fucks everything up. It's an incredibly noisy instrument. So if someone came in and I said, "You're not playing on time, maybe you should pick up some maracas or some a gentler instrument," and he said, "No, I'm just going with the flow." No, that doesn't work. So, Paula, to that, yes, there's something about going with the flow, the habits, but you want to get the habits. So the way we talk about it as musicians and the way I think about it, even when I'm applying it to this session we're having here, is woodshedding. We're thinking about things. We're not just going with the flow. Trumpists are going with the flow. So they are the perfect example of just relax, be present, um, have confidence, feel the spirit, and do whatever the fuck you want because it's all good. It's a popular notion. I think it's half true. I've got to get the habits by which I can stop thinking about the habits. And to get habits often takes work. What is a habit? It's a constraint. It's a limitation on what I do. So, for example, if I'm trying to learn how to play a musical instrument, at first my hands are doing too much. In making unnecessary motion. The way I make it look easy is by fussing and fussing until I've got just the right constraints. So I do everything that I need to and nothing I don't. This is a Taoist notion. The Taoists are dealing with exactly this question. The Tao is about how water flows. Go with the flow, it's saying. But and yet it's also saying it takes effort to get to where you go with the flow. It's an interesting tension built right into the Tao Te Ching. The Tao is called the way, the Tao means the way, and it means the way things are and the way to be with the way things are. It's clearly telling you that there's a better and worse way to be with the way things are. And at the same time, it's also saying, it's a paradoxical system as well. It's also saying, there are better and worse ways to go with the way things are. I love it for the way, I love all these paradoxes for the way it keeps on. You end up with these ironies that you have to work on, which is where to try, where not to try, where to let go, where not to let go. I'll give you an example of a very Taoist story. When I was 16, 17, 18, I had acne. And I was trying to be attractive because I really wanted to be popular. I needed to be attractive for confidence. And I remember, I'd be getting ready to go to a high school party and, I'd have a fucking third eye right up here. And so I got really into trying to get rid of it. I mean, it was like an obsession. I was in my first year of college or whatever, but it was really bothering me that the way, I just finally think, okay, things have cleared up. And then I'd get new craters. It would drive me crazy. Some of the things I tried, just to give you an example of how much exertion, I learned somewhere that what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to pat your face with honey, and that will get rid of acne. I, at one point, thought I know what I should do because acne is too much oil. I should just stop eating all oil. I didn't really understand the physiology. Finally, my mother sent me to a dermatologist who was someone who told me in passing that he had wanted to be a Jungian psychologist and ended up a dermatologist. And he looked at my skin and he said, okay, here's what I want you to do. Nothing. Don't wash your face. Cut it out with the honey. Do nothing. Do not touch your face. That was the last acne I ever had. That was a case of not trying, actually being exactly what I needed to do. My acne cleared up instantly. So that's an example. Do I take from that you should always do nothing? Fuck no. No, the question is when to try, when not to, what habits to get. So the habit of not engaging with my sits, that was a very Zen story. I'm only half Zen. I'm half about going with the flow and I'm half about going uphill against the flow. And I'm trying to figure out when to do which. Okay, boy, that was a lot. Let's see, true. But have you ever, okay, so yeah, so I fall all the time and always bounce because I got nothing better to do. Well, there is that. By the way, there's a song I recommend to you. I cry almost every time I hear it. It's Donnie McClurkin. It's a evangelical black gospel tune called "We Fall Down." Super simple, but it's about the lyrics of it are "We fall down, but we get up." Because a saint is just a sinner who falls down and gets up. That's the whole lyrics of the song. And really, it's rare that I don't cry when I listen to it. It's just beautiful. Donnie McClurkin. I really recommend it. Am I Christian? No, not at all. I mean, I find it a very problematic religion because it is selling what Donald Trump is selling, which is confidence no matter what. Confidence for cheap. I think it's really dangerous. At the same time, boy, if I was anybody who had the tendency to fall down a lot, if my life was less lucky, no, I'm pretty sure I'd be religious. I mean, why wouldn't I? I'm not, yeah, if I were them. Okay, anyway, right, confidence lets you beat your own drum. It's freedom, it's also, so you need it in order to try to do things. We know what it's like. What do we call it? We call it bonking. We call it freezing up. There's a bunch of names for what happens. Stage fright. All of those things are they really undermine your competence. And yet, to earn confidence, you need some competence. So I'm just playing with that these days, and I don't have a solution. By the way, that's, I think, maybe the most important area for me around confidence and competence. This came up. This was the theme in the last session, which was there are three main ways to pretend there's no problem, and they're kind of related to the things I was talking about early on about the question of what is trying. One is there is no problem. Another is there is a problem, but it's perfectly solved. And the other is there's a problem and it's unsolvable. So for me, the joy or confidence and competence comes from being able to sit unsettled with problems. So I have, you could say, confidence about my lack of confidence in my bets, that I can actually afford to stay calm while I'm doubting. And first of all, anytime I report on my behavior or my nature, you you are under no obligation to believe anything I say about myself. This is really important to me because I don't offer it to other people. I mean, fair is fair. I do not assume that other people, what they tell me about themselves is true, and therefore I can't. You don't owe me any belief in what I say about myself. The way I think of it is that if I am not like what I think, I'd be the last to know. So don't take my word about my confidence in my lack of confidence. For example, you are perfectly entitled to think that I'm actually a blowhard know-it-all who pretends that he's open-minded but actually isn't. That's perfectly reasonable as a suspicion about me. And yes, on the same time, I would also say I have plenty of confidence in ideas that are probably pretty unshakable. This is an interesting question. How can you tell who's open-minded? You could ask me 1,000 questions, and I give you an answer that I thought, yeah, it's very unlikely that in the rest of my life I'll change my answer. 1,000 questions, does that make me a know-it-all? Well, what about if the 1,001st question is one I don't know about? It's really hard to tell who's open-minded. I'm not trying to be open-minded. I'm trying to be open and closed-minded in the right ways, not the wrong ways. And so that's a issue for all of us. But I will say that once you get into the game of confidence, no matter what, then you really can't afford to admit to any doubt. The joy comes from not having doubt. So one of the things I'm trying this week on Trumpus is how confident are you in that? This is a standard street epistemology kind of a move. Say how confident, and if they say 100% confident that they're right about Trump making America great again or whatever, yeah, there's no reason for me to argue with them. Instead, what I'll do is say, "Look at you. You got 100% confidence. Okay, yeah." So does a bunch of other dickwads who disagree with you 100%. So something like that. Anyway, I never reach 100%, but I get damn close. Remember, I'm a fallibilist. No matter how confident I am in a bet, I remain still more confident that it is a bet. Let me see. Okay, so let's see. I fall all the time. Let's see. You try to gain skills, go with the flow when you play. Right. The way that Miles Davis or any of these people talk about it is that they woodshed, they work really explicitly to develop implicit memory. So this is an important distinction we make between basically know that and know how. So this relates directly to what you're talking about, Fun Monster. Paula, you start with know that. I study a lot of music theory. It's a lot of almost mathematical fussiness. It's stuff that's easy to learn intellectually, but then for it to turn into know-how, that is muscle memory, takes hours and hours and hours. And so that's an important distinction. And what we're doing is we start with know that and then turn it into know how. And as I say that, I actually realize that this is related to something I have to work on more this week, which is lots of us claim that know that proves that we have know-how. It's basically talk is walkism. What I say I know describes my behavior. So, for example, maybe this would be an example. If someone says, "I know I'm not perfect. No, nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect." That's lip service. Now, do they act like they know they're not perfect? They don't have to. They're unrelated. The confidence comes from declaring it. So that whole business about the talk and walk is actually related to explicit memory and implicit memory. Know that and know how. Think about how this plays out in religion. There are all these people who say that that by the cheapest means possible, born again, they have gotten Christ's love, and now they simply assume that they've internalized it. I watched a fun documentary the other day about Constantine, who's basically the first guy who made Europe Christian. And one of the things that, so he had some guilt because his second wife had accused the son by his first marriage of raping her. And without thinking, Constantine, the emperor, had his firstborn son slaughtered. And the firstborn son was the prize of his life. And then he figured out that his second wife had made the whole thing up, and he slaughtered her too. And at the end of his life, he gets baptized. This is the pivot point for all of Europe to turn Christian. Before that, it was a minority pagan religion. He gets baptized. Why does he get baptized at the end of his life? The rule about baptism is that after you get baptized, that's once you get to know that I have been saved, you're supposed to walk it from then on out. You're never supposed to sin again. This is why getting baptized at the end of life is the best way to go. Because then you don't have to worry about whether you're going to sin again after. Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? I just think that's amazing. The stories are so funny. Let's see. Okay, let's see. All right. What was your favorite movie you saw this year? There were quite a few, and that's a good question. And let me see if I can summon it up. I am watching American Gods again. That's a series. God, I mean, I saw some the last couple of weeks that blew my mind. Let me see. It's not coming right away. It's I'll think about it. If you haven't seen Kung Fu Hustle, I recommend it. That's an old movie, but I recommend it. It came up. I'll have to think about other movies, but that's not one you're likely to recognize as deep, but I think it is deep. It's extremely slapstick and deep. I'm watching Pluribus these days. I hope you guys are watching that. It's especially useful for me with my circle of friends because there's a bunch of people I end up around because I'm in Berkeley who are still talking kumbaya. Like if we all would just become of one mind together, or if we all relax into surrender and giving up our selfishness and becoming more autonomous, less autonomous, become more like a collective, like global mind, that'll be a good thing. Pluribus is dealing with how problematic that is. Let's see. Damn, I could cry. I'm gonna check it out. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Did you deliberately drop any friends this year? Yes. Actually, quite a few. Often it was mutual. Sometimes it was heartbreaking. I'm still stuck on some who went from adoring me to thinking I'm a bad person. That's an interesting situation. So you relax into the habit of assuming that someone is a source of confidence for you, and then they flip. This happened a lot in partnership for me over the years, not recently because I haven't partnered in like 11 years, yeah, that one's fascinating. It's very hard to get over someone's opinion of me when I have in effect gotten addicted to them thinking I was a good person. And then I've also got some that are a little more icy. Mostly because I would end up saying something that made someone uncomfortable, and now they're warier and reassessing their relationship with me. One of the ways in which I say some things that make people uncomfortable is that I will go meta on a conversation. Here's an example. I went and visited one of my old musical buddies up in Sonoma County this week, just for shits and giggles. We didn't even play music together, but we got together. And at one point, he started telling tales of daring do, as we tend to do when we get older. That is about his glory days playing music. And then shortly after that, and I said, "You've told me two stories like that. I don't need another." That's me going meta on a conversation. I'm not letting the conversation flow wherever it's going to go because actually he was having fun that I was not having fun with. It was boring to me. Think of it this way. The titles at the end of a movie are the most boring part of it unless you're in them. People will often say what they need to hear for their confidence at someone else's expense. I'm just sitting there having to listen to these stories. I'm seeing them as stories. And then another example of it was shortly after that, he started to talk about some UFO documentary he saw. And I said, so are you enjoying it as fiction? And he said, yeah, totally as fiction. And then he went on to make an argument for why it wasn't. I basically said to him, yeah, I don't, let's talk about something else. This is not right for me. So anytime you do that in a conversation where you go outside, and it's important to me, if I go outside, I have to do it from a place of preference, not from morality. I don't get to say that's a bad topic or you're being egotistical or something. I just have to say, let's talk about something else or something. Or I'd like to talk about something else, or I will simply change the subject. But if I do that with someone, or I bring up a challenge where someone else is confident, I will put them on edge. I have several friends who, at this point, I would say, there's a 70% chance I'll hear from them again. um, and I'm okay with that, apparently. I'm trying to get better at keeping the rapport while also being honest. But I would say that in my particular situation, I am erring on the side of honesty and trying to maximize the tact of honesty. But my priority is still honesty. This is and this is a difficult time to do it because I think these are the touchy 2020s. We're all a little on edge for the reasons that came up in what Mimi the painter was saying. It's just an edgy time. The more we're trying these days, the less it's working in some ways, and that's going to get worse and worse that way. So it's a touchy time to be out there being honest. It's a time that calls for a whole lot of tact and gentleness with each other. And I'll argue it's opposite. We have to be more tactful and more honest. So if there's any game I invite you to play, it's that one. How to be more honest and get away with it. The way I've thought about it is Gent 3.0. A Gent used to be landed Gent 3, or you could say 4.0. Then it became people who were tactful and kind and polite. Then it became Gent was what you put on a bathroom, or ladies and gents, the beginning of a speech is kind of a formal thing. Gent 4.0 would be someone who's trying to maximize the tact of their honesty. So that's a fun place to play. I operate on a fiction, which is there's nothing I can't say if I find the right way to say it. There's nothing that I could say that there's nothing I could want to say that I can't get someone to hear if I just find the right way to say it. I do not believe it's true. I think there are things that no matter how you say them, they won't work. And not only that, I do not impose the same law for others. That if someone disturbs me, it proves they said it wrong. I don't get to do that, but I do think it's a great game to say, okay, there's this thing I want to say to this person, and I don't want to lose them. I want to keep the thread or even strengthen the thread. What's the best way to say it? I think that's a great game. And by the way, that's what we do in the session tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning, California time. That's what we're doing. We're basically looking at how do you engage with people who are extremely prickly these days. So yes, anyway, on that, I'm a bad person because I'm grading final exams. Um, boy, I got to tell you, I only taught a little bit where you had grading to do. Boy, did I find it hard. I was grading essays. I don't know what you're grading, limited light, but it it's exhausting. And when you're grading essays that are poorly written, I couldn't write afterwards because I gotten into the music of that bad writing. Anyway, my heart goes out to anybody who has to grade. I have a really good buddy yeah, in the STEM field. Okay, so in some ways those are harder, in some ways those are easier. What do you do in the STEM field, my friend? It's nice to know it's nice to enough about me. What do you are you teaching? You're teaching some classes in STEM. I'd love to know what you're doing there. Go ahead and tell us. Uh, what did you say? Let's see. What did I say? I love that place. The zone. Let's see. Not trying in the zone. Let's see. Let's see. Yes, Jeff. Trying to think of the phrase. Being in the zone. By the way, being in the zone, in the flow, at one with the Tao. We have all these terms for it, and I would say that in a way we all live to be in the zone because the zone gives us confidence, calm confidence, calm competence is the zone flow. That whole idea is based on the idea that we're in the zone. Our probability of succeeding is good, but it's not. We're not phoning it in. We're on the edge of our seats. Um, in a way, the zone is a it's an appetite. So this is interesting to me, and I haven't thought about it much, but uh, there's a way in which my flow is always what have I done for me lately. This I think I notice in playing music. There's a phrase or something, some bass, something that I'd like to learn how to do. It's because it's hella impressive. And so I practice and practice until I can do it. And then once I can do it, it's not impressive to me anymore because I can do it. So it's kind of like, what have I done for me lately? There are other kinds of flow which are less like that. They're less a bottomless pit where you keep on digging deeper. Um, One way to think about it is I've got some musical friends who said, no, I don't practice anymore. I'm good enough. I like what I do and I just go out and do it. And then I have others who say, no, I'm always trying to get better at it. And at different phases of life, you would be in different stages about that. And about different activities, you'd be in different stages about that. But the joy, I think, comes in the form. The currency we're taking as salary when we're in the zone is confidence. That's what I need my confidence more than anything. And I don't think it's just me. I think it's all of us. I think confidence is the currency that drives most of what humans do. All sorts of things. What was your worst mistake of my worst mistake of this year? I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking 2 years back there were some real whoppers. Um, I'm gonna have to think about that and the movie. I mean, I could give you examples of them. One possibility is, I mean, again, by what standard? So I can think about videos I made that didn't get many views, but I'm trying to hold that as a secondary standard. The question is whether they were good videos by my standards, whether I was saying what I was trying to get across. So that's not going to do it. Um, I don't know offhand, and it's because I don't make mistakes, actually. No, I'm just trying to think. Oh, no, I can actually tell you. So this is a year that I was basically bounced out of playing music. and I think it was largely my mouth. Um, I'm not a great musician. I never was. I just don't have the dexterity for it or the appetite to study as much as I'd need to get it into my hands. But I was getting a reputation for what I jokingly called bandstand Tourette's. If I was on a gig or even on a jam session and so the drummer was slowing down or someone was playing too loud, I would blurt. So I'd be singing and playing bass, and I'd also blurt. But because I was blurting, I wasn't as tactful as I could be. And not only that, there's an ambiguity among musicians at my level about whether you can actually comment on each other's playing. And I was booted out of a whole musical community for saying things that I think bothered other people's confidence. You need confidence in order to play well. And these were not on gigs, these were in jam sessions. You wouldn't want to do it on a gig. You don't want to bark at someone in a gig, though I can actually point to a time this last year when I did. And at some point I realized, no, between my loss of hearing and my mouthiness, which is perfectly fine in this environment, but not necessarily in music, there were players who no longer wanted to play with me. And I look back on it. Part of this was what's going on was I was having extraordinary success being mouthy on YouTube. And then I go straight from that, or mouthy with clients. I go straight from that to a jam session in the next room over from this one, the living room, and I'd be mouthy. And I had this one friend who was the love of my life musically. 20 years we played together. And he was always a gentler soul than me. He was the kind of guy who I would argue he would say it himself, that he's conflict averse. And I am suddenly becoming a star on YouTube for dealing with conflict. And I'm going into the extra room with bravado and irony and a lot of self-effacing humor, but also a lot of teasing others. And they seemed to enjoy it. And then two people, it was too hot for them. And they said, basically, you're not a good person to, um, uh, uh, you're not a good person to play with. And to some extent, they said, you're not a good person. One of them, the love of my life, said, you leave a wake of carnage among your friends and family. This is all part of his attempt to intervene to get me to be more like him. So losing them was a bit of a disappointment to me this year, and I do ascribe it to me. I got to figure out where to be tactful and where not to be. And in general, I err on the side of not being tactful, being more blunt, and I lost a bunch of friends. So that's a mistake. I think it's moral? No, I don't think it was a moral error. And that's an important distinction. It was a strategic mistake. I underestimated how sensitive people were getting around me. But it's a matter of preference. I don't think it's a moral issue. I don't think I violated a moral standard. And that's an important difference to me about mistakes. It was a miscalculation of the situation I was in. It was not that I violated some moral imperative. Hello, Louise. Fancy you being here. Nice to see you. We'll talk. Let's see. Won't be more specific. So don't do myself. Let's say, oh, you won't be more specific. Don't. No, it's fine. I'm ABD. Oh, right. Cool. If you ever want to talk to me about your ABD, that'd be fun. Get in touch. You've got my email, right? So just get in touch. I'll do a little advertising. We only have about 20 minutes left here. Paula, you say you made that mistake? Duh. Paula, you're mouthy like me. And yeah, so that's understandable. So I'm putting my email address in here. Email.com. Limited light, if you feel like getting in touch, if you ever want to talk about what you do with your ABD, because I have some background in that, I might be able to help motivate you or whatever it takes, or I'd be happy. You've earned a half hour of my free time if you want it, and I wouldn't recommend it. Just get in touch with me. Here's the other thing I want to give you all. So this is where we're meeting tomorrow. The study group it basically we call it the psychoproctology study group. This is at 9 o'clock in the morning, California time tomorrow. It's people coming together and basically dealing with the question in practical terms, how do you talk to Trumpists? But it's more general than that. It's basically how do you engage with people? Um, Hello, Donna, nice to see you. How do you engage with people there's no talking to? Or to expand it, how do you humble or humiliate humans who will say or do anything to avoid human humility? That's what we're meeting about tomorrow. I also have to report out we've now had 2 of the Sunday sessions, which are an extension of this. So this is YouTube Live, and we talk about whatever. And I talk and talk and talk and talk, and you write in comments along the line, along the side. I have proposed that we meet at that same Google Meet address. Um, uh, um, and this is an 11 o'clock meeting every other Sunday. So we're not meeting tomorrow. We would meet the following Sunday. I have no way to broadcast it other than this. So you just show up if you want it. And this is a conversation where you get to talk too. We meet and we talk. It's a little messy. I'm not satisfied with how it's going so far because with this, I'm ending up steering the whole conversation. And with tomorrow's psychoproctology meeting, we have a topic. But with this other group, the wide open thing at 11 o'clock every other Sunday, not tomorrow, but the Sunday after, it gets a little split endy. It's a little tangential. People can run with things, and I end up following it out. And then there's a problem about whether I'm boring the other people who were involved. I'm gonna have to figure out how to do that. But I do think there's room for a conversation where I don't just hold the floor nonstop. I have no problem doing this. I adore it. Remember, I started a group called Toastmasters Anonymous for people who admitted that they confessed that they were addicted to giving speeches. This is the love of my life, is to talk and to play out with ideas, to think out loud, and all of that. So we say, yeah. So what we're doing, Paula, this was what we said out of the last meeting, was people are going to be pitching topics to me, and a few people have already. Nil from Sweden, and then hold us to it and try to stick with that topic for a while. And maybe we'll do it by a show of hands or something. I don't know, but I want to make it engaging for people, especially because unlike this, people can drop out of this without any fanfare at all. They just slip out. Slipping out of awkward meetings is a real problem, though. God, I have one story of a time I did that. It was just amazing. Anyway, I won't tell that story just now, but it can get really awkward. So if I hold a meeting like that and I'm boring someone, they may feel uncomfortable. So I may have to make it clear that you can leave anytime. People do leave anytime on the meeting tomorrow. Well, I'll tell a short version of it. The daughter of a famous thinker who I didn't think was much of a thinker invited me to a fundraiser for her thinking, or for her think tank. And I happened to be hanging out at the time with a Nigerian teenager whose name was Queen Egbe, who I'd met at the airport, and she needed a place to stay. She was studying poetry. There was no hanky-panky between us. That wasn't what was going on. But I said, why don't you come with me? So the two of us went to this event, and we sat down, and the person started talking and would not stop. But it was a room of easily 40 people, and I happened to sit close to the front. And nobody left. We were the first to leave. And I pulled out, and then Queen Egbe pulled out. She was the only Black person in the room, too. It was in Marin County. That was beside the point, actually, but it was just, the whole thing was so surreal because I was a friend of this person, and yet I could not sit there and listen to her anymore. She was talking in ways that just sounded like poetry. They didn't sound, she wanted to claim it was scientific and rigorous, but it didn't sound that way to me, and I was done. But then we realized that our bags were towards the front. So not only did we leave, but we had to come back. It's a trivial story. But all I'm saying is that it's like that. Donna gets to clean the erasers because she showed up so late. Let's see. All right. Favorite New Year's Eve memory? Okay, I do have one. I do have one. In my last partnership, which wasn't going well, it was towards the end of it. New Year's was there was New Year's, and then we broke up by April or May, and this was 11 years ago, and it was the relationship that made me realize I was done because almost a cartoon caricature of everything incompatible about me with respect to partnership. A lot of it having to do with my mouthiness. That is, it is really dangerous to be that honest when you're living together. It's really dangerous. You both need so much confidence in each other. You're leaning in on each other. This was a 2-year relationship, on and off. But you're worried that the other person's going to turn out to be a sinkhole. If the other person starts to say, "Yeah, I don't know if I'm feeling this," real problematic. But we were shaky, and so we were problematic because I tend to say what's on my mind. I'm the kind of when I feel tension in the air, I want to talk about that, and it's mostly not a good idea. I don't think at close range. I don't believe in processing the way I used to. I used to believe that you'd process a relationship and you'd come to clarity. I don't think that happens much. In fact, with several of my clients these days, I'm saying, you know what you got to do? Stop fucking processing. Stop talking about it. But this was a relationship that wasn't going well, and we took mushrooms on New Year's Eve, and it was just the two of us rattling around the house. My house is my where I live is 4 rooms, and and I didn't want to be with her, and um, and yet I also felt an obligation. It was one of those kind of relationships where, in order to feel confidence, she wanted me to be around, and so I went into my office and closed the door, and I noticed myself on mushrooms. I noticed myself oscillating between you creep, you cold-hearted bastard creep. You should be out there hanging out with her. Show her the love and respect she deserves. If you want to make this relationship work, what are you so selfish? You go in here and do the things you want to do. You're not even willing to compromise for her. That was half of what was going on for me. And then the other half, oscillating with it, was I'm fucking sick of this. Why the ball and chain? What am I doing feeling guilty about that? I want to do what I want to do. It's New Year's Eve and I'm on mushrooms and I'm following out my own ideas and I'm having fun with it. Fuck that fucking shit. And the insight that came to me from that was about equanimity. My equanimity comes from being equally anxious in opposite directions. For example, that I'm too kind or not kind enough, too generous or not generous enough, too assertive or not assertive enough. I was done looking for the happy middle ground. I was in a place, suddenly I realized, no, for me, it is that balancing act. And that was a New Year's insight that was worth a lot to me. Not because it's profound, it's probably been said dozens of different ways by dozens of different people. It's already almost there in Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. I mean, that goes way back. It's like, yeah, you're trying to find the right balance of opposites, right? But for me to recognize that equanimity was really about the balancing act. It wasn't about a set point or about always being on one side or another. That actually my tension, my confidence in lack of confidence was where I actually needed to be. So that was my answer there. Um, MK Zip, experience is our favorite name for mistakes. That's right. Though I have another one, which is ending up in outer Mongolia, uh, uh, which is, and the way that image first came to me is I was imagining um, trying to go in the right direction while running, while sitting on a spinning wheel. And so you can head in the right direction and the tables can turn. And now you're headed towards outer Mongolia. Okay. All right. Let's see. We're getting close now. What have I not addressed that you want to actually address? Someone say your heart was telling you what you really wanted. No, I agree. And yes, this is what I want to say about that. By March, by March, she left in May. It took a while to get it separated. She didn't have much of the means to go off on her own, and it took me a while because I kept on oscillating back into guilt like I should try again with her. But there was that sense of equanimity, and then there was realizing, and it might have happened around February or March, that I was done. That I'd had all the partnership I ever needed in life, that I just didn't want it anymore, that I was getting a bargain. She was 14 years younger and cuter. I was getting a bargain on something I no longer wanted, and that I wasn't good at it. So it was like realizing I'm glad that my lack of appetite finally caught up with my lack of aptitude. And ever since then, I find so much more ease, comfort, honesty, in intimacy in friendship. I don't recommend it for everybody, but for me, it's a much better way to go. Um, yeah, yeah. So that, yeah, so to recognize my limitations and where I fuss, and I'm not fussing over how to make a partnership work. And I love to have that agenda off the table. It's just cleaner for me. And besides, I'm gonna turn 70 in a few months. When you think back on our grandparents, they weren't busy, uh, on dating sites at 70. I mean, some were, but it wasn't most of them. Okay, so we got another 10 minutes if you want it, by which I mean my bladder is not full yet, so we can, if there's anybody else got anything they wanna talk about? Anything on your mind? Um, oh, I think it's probably worth it for me to get to, what was it? Oh, I didn't touch at all on the topic that I chose to make, um, right and wrong. Uh, um, the topic this week. Um, it's a simple point, and yet it's thematic for me, and really important that I be clear about it. Um, I've tried several times to write a longer piece about vanity projects or about vanity. I think we have to have vanity projects. I think that whether they're functional for anything else, a vanity project is how we keep up our confidence. And vanity projects are clearly dangerous. And so I think we have to manage our vanity projects, and we cannot manage them if we deny that we have them. Um, so I am trying to get people to I am promoting this idea of, come on in, the water's fine. You do have a vanity project. Even if you deny having a vanity project, that is your vanity project. Of what is a vanity project? It's a way to feel confident by saying, well, at least I'm this, not that, or at least I have this, not that. And I think we need them. And I think there's not enough real ones to go around. And therefore, what we need is fictional ones. But to manage a fictional one, you need to admit that you have it. You cannot admit to an addiction. You cannot manage an addiction you don't admit to having. So this is, in a way, I mean, it's just clearly one that I keep on coming back to. I even created a group for a while, Exceptionalists Anonymous. We admit that we have this abiding appetite, your ego. But the point is, notice how that word vanity and ego, they sound bad. And I'm saying, yeah, they're terrible if you think they're so bad that you deny that you have them, that egotism is beneath you is a standard vanity project, and it fucking sucks. It makes people incredibly stupid. When they make it their proud vanity project is claiming that they are realists, that they don't have a vanity project. So this is, you've heard this as a theme from me before, and I'll just mention it. I'm talking about safe escapism. I need my vanity projects. I think we all do. Does anybody else have Jeremy's addiction? Um, uh, Lego without ego. Well, actually, there we go. Lego. Yeah, no, I am totally done with this idea that you can somehow get rid of your ego. It's just horseshit. I find it vile. I find it growth stunting. I still deal with a fair amount of it. and I'm trying to do something else. I mean, I really find that the most dangerous fiction of all is the claim that I have somehow transcended my ego. Um, uh, oh, I got it. Oh, there we go. I'll tell you one person who's addicted to me. I probably should end with this joke. You've heard it before, and I could tell it for either gender, but I will tell it the feminist version of it, which is that Rachel walks in on her best friend Naomi having sex with Rachel's husband, and um, and Rachel says, um, "Naomi, I have to, but you? I have to have sex with him, but you? I am addicted to me." Uh, and probably will be till the end of my days. And that is where the ego fits in. Um, a new area of research that's going on in the scientific work I do. We we are trying to explain selves and trying, but more and more we're noticing in the detailed research that self is not a binary. In a way, it is in that I'll be dead or alive. That is, I'm either dead or alive. But the problem with it is um, we are all actually self-ish. So if you look up the word altruism, it just alter means like alter ego, other, alter. So there's selfishness or selfism, and there's otherism. And the relationship between them gets really complicated and interesting. So I am a self that in complexity theory or somewhere they talk about it as holons. A holon is a whole unto itself, but it's also a part. It's a whole comprised of parts, but it's also part of a larger whole. This is a guy named Arthur Koestler, who's an important thinker to me. So yes, I am a self, but I also identify with larger selves, and there are sub selves within me. So getting clear on how to think about all of that is the issue. My vanity project is humility is exactly the irony I'm asking us to play with. And one thing we can do is to say that that's absurd and laugh at it. But I also want to say it is a tension to manage, like all of these paradoxes, like commit yourself to flexibility or be intolerant of intolerant or do not be negative. All of those are paradoxes. And what they do is they bring out, okay, this question about um, if we think about vanity as my selfism, the alternative to altruism, then there is this question about how much of it should be about humility and how much of it should not be. Obviously, at the extreme, we get the person who claims that they're exceptional because they're absolutely humble. But otherwise, there's this tension, and it brings me back to something my dad said. As a philanthropist, my dad was lucked into some business success, lucked and talented his way into some, ended up being a philanthropist, ended up placing some really good bets in the philanthropy world back during a time when there was hope for making social change. He backed Tal Alinsky, who founded the Industrial Areas Foundation, which is where Obama got his training as a community organizer, backed Ralph Nader and all of this. And he would go speak at these conferences of people who were philanthropists. What is a philanthropist? It's someone, phil means love, anthropist means humankind. So these are people who love humankind. And he said, um, let's see, he said, the life of a philanthropist is hard. For having decided to love humankind, you're forever burdened by the question, how much? Um, he said it's easy if you're a misanthrope. A misanthrope is a cynic, someone who hates humanity. Yeah, you decided that humanity sucks. But once you've decided that humanity doesn't suck, then you're stuck with the question, the tension that Hidden Doll Life is talking about. My vanity project is humility. You actually have to figure out where to accommodate others and where to not accommodate others. And yeah, it's hard to say no, but at the same time, I think that it's very hard to say no. It may get easier to say no in a dangerous way. When in shithole countries, there's more saying no. you simply get used to it. There's a way in which, for example, if immigration becomes a major problem, as it's like to with climate change, there's going to be a whole lot more saying no. Um, but yeah, there have been times in our era when saying yes felt like the more likely thing to do. And then there's the version of it where you say yes, but you don't mean it. You simply say you're charitable and then you're not. Um, all of that and more. Let's see. What if we suck, but we're trying not to suck? I will say one last thing about that. Um, yeah, I'll go ahead and add this one last thing. There are two ways to measure merit. One is by performance, and the other is by effort. You can say one is in context and the other is out of context, which is I don't give a fuck who you are. If you suck, you suck. And the other is, well, you do suck, but you're trying to not suck. So thinking about the tension between these two different approaches, measuring merit by effort versus performance. Now, I'll give you an example of a place where you'd want to measure by performance. Medical school. In medical school, you don't say, well, yeah, he fucked up that surgery and all the tests and he doesn't know what he's talking about, but bless his heart, he comes from, he had a hard childhood and he's not that gifted, so let's cut him some slack. You wouldn't do it there. You might do it elsewhere. It would be important to do it elsewhere. It's how you give some people the confidence by which to try harder. You say, I know you're not that great at it. You would do this in sixth grade, in fifth grade. You do this in special ed. Okay, now, which is the more original, which is the more natural or original standard, measuring by performance or by effort? Okay, think about predators and prey. So we're talking about pre-human or non-human. You're not going to get a lion who says, well, I won't go after that gazelle because that gazelle, I mean, look at it, got a broken leg. Yeah, performance is right. Nature is performance-based. Where did this idea of trying come in? Where would you ever get the capacity to be liberal-minded enough to accommodate someone who's disadvantaged? Someone who says, hey, man, I'm trying. That's a human thing. It comes with language. With the special, unique empathy we can do by imagining being someone else conceptually. We do that through language. Yes, we have other kinds of awareness of other creatures. That is, we can do it without language, but to really put yourself in someone else's shoes, you do it conceptually. And it's a really interesting challenge. For example, my wayward son would always tell me he was trying. And I'd have to wonder, okay, is he trying? Because this is a guy who, he had the misfortune of having a mental disorder that made him look indulgent. Some engender sympathy. Some you look at him and you say, I'm going to have to accommodate this one. This one's clearly got something going on. But there are certain mental disorders that make someone act in a way that makes them look indulgent. And so when you're dealing with someone like that, and this guy is the muse of my life, this is my firstborn son, because he opened up so many interesting, difficult questions to me. And one of the big ones was this one about performance versus effort. And he would always insist that he's giving 110 effort. And I had to make an assessment of whether he was giving 30% or whether he was, calling, because the behavior was so incredibly indulgent looking. Okay. Yes, our ancestors were prehuman. That's certainly true. Some would say measuring effort is the evolution of the being. Yeah, that's a topic for another day, my darlings. All right, so just a reminder of where we are. Tomorrow at 9:00, we're having the meeting at that email address, at that Google Meet site I just gave you. Here it is again. This is the site at 9:00 tomorrow morning, California time. It's also the site for the 11:00 the following Sunday. Put it on your calendars if you'd like to have a conversation where I'm not just talking at you, but with you typing on the side, but where we actually talk. I'm around. And you can enter into We're not taking roll, much to Jeff's disappointment because the guy wants brownie points. Like, I mean, where you get your confidence, dude? Showing up first is a good place to get your confidence, especially because it's me. And let's face it, we're both addicted. But then on top of that, the 11 o'clock Sunday after this one is just a jam session. And then I also did include my email here because if you do have something you want to talk to me about, and this is for Limited Light or anybody else, get in touch. I do have clients. I mean, I'm paid well on a sliding scale for doing one-on-one consulting, mostly on questions like how to deal with a difficult person or how to deal with a tough judgment call you're dealing with. But I'm also, this is just what I do with myself. And I'm lucky to get to do it. And I'm delighted that I get to do it with you guys. Thank you so much for being here today. And I'll be back again next Saturday and the Saturday after until I die. Okay. See you tomorrow.